Well, reform was one of the key promises made by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau when he formed government 10 years ago. Remember him? It very quickly was pushed to a shelf somewhere deep in Ottawa and not to be talked about at the government level again. But citizens groups have kept the flame alive, and one group, the longest ballot committee, has been working to run record numbers of candidates in targeted ridings. The latest target is Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's Ottawa area riding, where the ballot is a meter long with 91 names on it. Don't believe me? Well, we do have a little something to show you of that ballot. Here we go. The
wow.
On the left is a friend of ours who actually lives in the riding and could not believe when she went in and picked up her ballot and unfolded it behind the screen. She had
Looks like they needed a longer table.
Yeah, it had to be folded like 6 times, I think. And then on the right-hand side is the longest ballot committee's site on Blue Sky. And they put a banana along the side there to just give you some perspective as to how long the ballot is in comparison to an average banana.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. Well, now, the other group is Fair Vote Canada, which is taking a much more refined approach to trying to abolish our first-past-the-post system, with most voting reformers favoring proportional representation. That's a system based on the number of seats a party wins, and it closely matches the percentage of the total votes it receives. So instead of a winner-takes-all approach like first-past-the-post, proportional representation aims to reflect the will of the voters more accurately by allocating seats based on proportional support. Well, Eddie, how do you feel about walking in to your polling station and all of a sudden being handed something like that?
Oh, wow. To tell you the truth, Gary, if I had walked up to my my booth to actually place my hard-earned vote, if you want to call it, and be presented with a folding piece of paper that's wider than my arm span, my wingspan, which is pretty big, I don't know what I would have said. I think I would have started to laugh and stuck my head up and say, "Are you guys for real?" You know what? Call me old-fashioned, but I understand protests, and I think they're making a very, very valid point. Don't get me wrong, but I think there is a place and time in how you conduct your protest work, and I'm not sure whether or not at a polling station is the right way to approach it. You make your point, and you should take the elections or portray the elections as extremely serious thing. You and I both in our lifetimes have gone through all sorts of protest parties. On this particular, I went to vote early, by the way. So, the Rhinoceros Party was actually there. Okay, so to me, that's a good way to look at a political party that's a protest party. It's always been a protest party since day one. They're on the ballot, but to do something like that and inconvenience a voter, I would be able to go through the 80 and pick my candidate. But what about the folks that are seniors, the senior going to vote and being presented with this? I don't think it's a fair shake in getting the correct vote from the seniors when they're presented with something like this. A, they may make a mistake and put their X in the wrong spot. B, they're going to be overwhelmed and basically say, I can't do this. And C, they can't ask anybody for help either. So I think it's the wrong place to do it, and the elections should be taken more seriously by these protest groups. And I don't think it should be at the ballot box, in my opinion.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Rhinoceros Party, because these guys are kind of like an offshoot of the Rhinoceros Party.
Are they?
Their whole goal is, they started a few years ago in, I think there was a provincial election. Anyway, their last two ventures, the first one was the Toronto-St. Paul riding, that the Liberals, safe Liberal seat that they lost in the by-election back in the summer, which was the beginning of the end for Justin Trudeau.
Right.
And then the other one was here in Verdun, the by-election we had back in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the fall or early?
Yeah, I think it was the fall. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and their goal is to have a ballot at some point with 100 people on. Now, I'm like you. There's protests, and then there is just plain foolery. And this is a cross between foolery and just plain asinine. Like, it's just, you're inconveniencing so many people and costing votes, because some people will just go in and say, yeah, okay, boom, and they'll do whatever to either spoil the ballot or, they'll vote, because some of these candidates, like a lot of these names are ghost names. And the chief electoral officer for Canada has raised this point now a couple of times. And I saw a great comment, and I think it was by a PC supporter, either last night or one night I was flipping through. I can't remember if it was X or Blue Sky or whatever. Anyway, he said, how about going back to the day when you had to put $1,000 down the pot, to show that you were serious about running.
Right.
And non-refundable deposit. Like, I just have a couple of reforms in my mind as far as voting is concerned in this country. First of all, I like the approach to proportional representation, number one.
Right.
And number two, I think that anyone who's going to offer for office, whether it's at the municipal level, particularly at the provincial level and at the federal level, you should have to go in and sign up for a course that starts, I don't know, 6 months before an anticipated election, and go through a basic course in training you for the level of politics that you are going to try and become involved in, so that you come out knowing and you can hit the ground, not running, but at least walking instead of sort of crawling on your hands and knees. Mm-hmm. If you're elected, you're successful. That also shows your commitment to what you're doing. Right. And you should have some kind of a deposit, I think, at the federal level, $1,000 set. Maybe at the provincial level, $500. And at the municipal level, $150, $200, something like that. And it's refundable if you reach a certain percentage of votes cast. And if you don't, then you don't get your money back. And that, I think, will weed out some of the yahoos or the thrill seekers, the egotistical types who think that, they're all that and the $5 bill, and they're not.
Well, Gary, doesn't this kind of err on the side of civil disobedience? It's right on the line if you really think about it, because you are inconveniencing a lot of people in terms of them conducting their right as citizens of Canada to vote in our election. It's a disruption of the elections. How different is that than somebody standing outside and preventing people from going in to vote? Civil disobedience, as far as I'm concerned. So the other question I ask is, I understand there are certain laws in terms of who's allowed to elect, and obviously, who's allowed to put their names on the ballots. And obviously, they did not break any laws. No laws were broken with all those names placed in the ballots. So you look at how Elections Canada is conducting these elections, there should be some sort of a criteria to allow a name to be part of a ballot that that lets the voters know that these are serious people. The examples that you set forth in terms of a deposit being put down is one way to do that. But a protest group, they can raise $50, $100, whatever, and still do the same thing. I think they can sharpen the laws, or am I wrong on that?
Well, the other side of it is, though, remember, I said they also must go through a course. And
I see.
An exam and come out, and the passing grade can be 75%. God, that's too low. 85%, 80 or 85%. And you know that they're committed and serious to that point, because how many people, especially at the municipal level, will walk in, and there are a couple of people here who will attest to this, you can see in the comments, and we'll get to those comments in a moment. But how many people walk into the municipal level and all they know about municipal politics, they've never graced the council chamber, not once. They may have caught a little bit on the local community channel for about 5 minutes. That's it. But they walk in and they think like, oh yeah, this is easy. They have no idea about, the acts that have to be followed and all of the bylaws and everything else, and the procedures that must be followed for rezonings and development permits and all of this sort of thing. And they're just gobsmacked. 4 years, like I know in New Brunswick, it's a 4-year term for municipal politics. It used to be 3.
Right.
And, a lot of people were really by the 3rd year, and some of them now, even on the council, by the 4th year, have not caught on, quite frankly. But, just kind of getting their stride, and then they're going to drop out anyway because it was too much work. Let's catch up on a couple of comments. Why is the ballot that long? Because we have 91 people registered as candidates, and under the Act, they all have to be on the ballot. So it's pretty tough. I remember we had one in St. John, New Brunswick, many, many, many years ago. It was maybe a foot long. And at that time, everything was counted too.
And this was on Pierre Poilievre's district, right? That was in his electorate?
This is in his riding this time around. Okay, let's go to a couple of more comments too. We've got some more coming in here. Let's start at the top. There we go. And Gregory Z. Hello from Rothsay, beautiful Rothsay, gateway to St. John, New Brunswick. And Greg's a former councillor before amalgamation out there. There were 6 municipalities all sitting side by each. None of them really got along with one another. And anyway, there's a whole other story there, but Greg's one of the good ones. And
did you get into a fight with him, Gary, or you say you didn't get along? Okay.
No, we were on the same page pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, we were reaching hands across the borders to move forward and keep things on a civil note. Anyway,
nice.
Greg has some experience in this. I'm sure there are a few stories he could tell as well. Let's see now. Angelica, oh, okay. We went back. Where is she? Oh, here we go. There we go. Hey, gentlemen, shout out to Eddie's awesome shirt. And that is one long ballot. Yes, it is. Okay, and Jim Hennessy, down to St. John, New Brunswick we go. Have a great program, gentlemen. He always gets in with that go Habs, Eddie, for you.
Smart guy.
Yeah. Okay, all right, let's move along here. So, really, I think one thing that once we get this election out of the way, that we have to do, it has to happen, is we have to move forward with electoral reform. There's no two ways about it. This kind of foolishness, and we're not giving in to them. It's something that should have been done 10 years ago or even before that. The way the seats are divided up, and you have vote-rich Ontario, seat-rich Ontario. You have seat-rich Quebec.
Yeah.
And then from there it kind of starts dropping off. And yes, the Conservatives have a seat of power in the West, in the 3 prairie provinces in particular, and they're not doing so bad in British Columbia. Thank you very much. This trip.
Yeah.
But the number of seats, they could win every seat out there and still not form government.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking at things like that, and you look at how resource-rich Western Canada is, and how, they're feeling used in a lot of ways, like, okay, keep those transfer payments flowing east. But at the same time, they're not getting a whole lot of say on a proportional basis as to Ontario and Quebec.
And then you can understand the discontent, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and when I had the opportunity to live in British Columbia for 2 years, and I really very quickly learned why they felt that way. There was one federal election. We were all set up to do our election coverage. Polls closed at 8 o'clock BC time, which would be midnight back in Atlantic Canada and 11 o'clock here. But here's the thing, Eddie, like, I'm just going on the air. I don't even have my intro finished, haven't even introduced my guest commentators, and we get a bulletin, majority Liberal government elected.
The media declares the winner before the race is even half over. I get it. That's frustrating for me to watch as well, being in Eastern Canada. Imagine that.
So there we are. Our votes are just starting to be counted, and the game's over. We're not really contributing to the totals. We contribute to the seat count to a degree, but we're not contributing to that overall feeling of win. We're just electing our local representatives
or feeling of inclusion in the election as well, right?
Yeah.
I get that.
And here's the other thing, that this was back in 1998, 99, 2000, in that time frame. I had Bell satellite at my apartment, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm watching back east feeds, and they just start going blank, 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 blank. They had to cut all of the feeds from Eastern Canada as the polls closed,
right,
going west, so that they could not reinstall those feeds until polls closed in your particular Western province, so as not to influence the vote. I guess they felt that we were all stupid and that we couldn't think for ourselves and think, oh, well, I might as well vote Liberal because the Liberals are winning. No, like, we're not all stupid and just kind of follow along. But that's how I felt. So you get an understanding for the Western alienation. You really do.
Well, I mean, we're speaking about electoral reform here, and goes back to Election Canada, and nothing's really been done the last 10 years. On top of controlling the idiocy that goes in the ballots, as you just demonstrated, they have to reform in terms of electorates and seats by population, which is something I'd like to see as well. And then by the same token, you tell me, I mean, you've been on panels that have covered elections before. Look, you know what? Elections are a big bread and butter in terms of advertising for media right across the country, right? What do you think would happen should the government, or as part of the electoral reform, ban the publication of where we stand as soon as polling stations close to start broadcasting those results? I'm not saying stop it completely. I'm basically saying until the last polling office closes out in Vancouver Island someplace, that, pass a law that it can't be broadcast anywhere until the voting process is finished across the country, and then have at it. Go ahead and publish it. I know that would be a huge impact on revenue streams for your CTVs and your CBCs and local media, because they really can cover the election with what people want to see, action and who's leading the horse race. So what do you think about that? I mean, that's what's in my head. Do not broadcast results until the last polling station is closed, and then have at it.
Well, that's essentially what they were doing when they cut off the TV feeds from Eastern Canada until the polls closed in your area of Western Canada. However, at that time, there was this thing that was starting to come into its own, and there was one election before that federal election I'm talking about, where somebody went on the internet and started posting results all across the country and around the world. And he was charged under the Elections Act at the time, and I can't remember the exact outcome, but it didn't stop him, because the next election, which was the one I was talking about, he was doing it again, and you could see more people doing it as well. And so, you have, like I say, this thing called the internet. What are we going to do? Shut down the internet as well?
Well, how about cutting it off at the source? Make it unlawful for polling counts to be communicated to anyone until they're basically told to do it, right? I mean, somebody's got to count these ballots, and whoever is summarizing these ballots and entering them in some system or whatever the case is, it would be forbidden or against the law for any of this to be communicated with the outside world. Make it the biggest secret in Canada. So have CSIS run it. I don't know, but just, hold the information, withhold it until the last polling station closes. That'll prevent any sort of publications on social media, and will certainly stop mainstream media from showing it as well. They'll have to show something else on television, like maybe a hockey game, No, but I'm just thinking out loud here, Gary. It just makes no sense to me. And you know what? If I was out west along with you, I would have been pissed as well.
Yeah,
having to deal with this election in and election out, right?
Let me counter that a little bit in the fact that you shut down the internet, but then you still have phone with text messages. And have you ever known anything related to politics to be locked down 100%? Somebody's going to leak somewhere along the way, and it's out there. And then, you have fine examples south of the border, where once again we have the defense secretary in chat with his brother or brother-in-law and his wife.
And his lawyer.
Really? Top secret information?
Oh, but it's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
No, but you get the point. I mean, both you and I agree. We're in agreement on this, right?
Yeah. Only coming at it from different angles. But, like I say, I go back to it. In some respects, it's an insult to my intelligence to think that I'm going to change the way I'm going to vote just because I know what's happening back east. Because my focus usually is first on the person who's going to be representing my riding. And then I, fall back to, the party that he or she is affiliated with and what that party is standing for and what that leader is like. But I focus on the home base first. Now, this election, it's a whole different kettle of fish. It's completely different. And this one, as most Canadians, we're focusing on the leader first.
Yeah.
And then the platforms, and then the local candidates. And when you look.
Well, there was 7 million. There was 7 million of us that already hit the advanced polls. Wow. I don't think it's people just trying to avoid the polling lines. I think that this election is so important to a lot of people for a variety of reasons that we're showing up in record droves. And I really hope come election night, the polling stations are going to have the same problem with the lineups outside. That shows how committed Canadians are this time around in using our civil rights and our duties as citizens to actually vote. And we are all voting for something extremely important, which is Canada itself. We really are voting for Canada itself this time.
Absolutely. And it would be great to see the final outcome that we have somewhere around 85% of the registered voters who actually went out and cast a ballot. That would be so good to see.
Are you aware of what the record has been for Canada? No.
No, I can find out, but in the last number of years, you're lucky to get between 60 and 69% of the people out.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking municipal, provincial, or federal. It really dropped off. But you know what? If we have a good turnout and having over 7 million out voting over the 4 days of a long weekend, then the other thing that does is it sends a pretty strong message to our friend in the White House as well that, you know what? When Canadians say elbow, we damn well.
Yeah, they're not kidding. Yeah, we're not kidding.
Yep. Don't mess with us. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see if whoever forms the next government picks up on this whole aspect and we move forward this time with electoral reform as a top item, priority item. Amongst everything else, there are a lot of other things in there, but I really think that this is key, and that we also, for God's sakes, get the federal government into at least the 20th century with using technology and how it communicates with its citizens, the taxpayers, and in the way we can vote. Whether we have the opportunity to be able to vote online, and I've heard all of the arguments about the security and everything else and blah blah blah. Well, how many ballot boxes have gone missing or keys gone missing for the locks on the ballot boxes? And oh, look what we found 3 weeks later, a ballot box that hadn't been counted. Yeah,
right.
You know what? Yes, there are security issues. There's security issues in everything we touch.
You think there wasn't a security issue down south with Mr. Musk and his resources? Come on.
Exactly. You think there are not security issues with foreign involvement in our election?
True. Very true.
Coming through Bookface and Twit and the rest of them. You'll see prime examples. Right.
Well, you know what? I mean, just one final comment on the electoral reform. I mean, I agree 100% with you. I hope the next elected government is going to put this on top of the list in terms of priorities and get electoral reform to ensure there's proper representation in the House of Commons across the entire population and not just pockets of population. What I'm actually hoping for, if this actually goes through and passes through, where we actually perpetuate electoral reform in Canada, that some of the provinces will follow suit. As you know, here in Quebec, there's more power out in the région of Quebec, of La Belle Province, than there is in metropolitan areas like Quebec City and Montreal. So I agree with it 100% in terms of representation by population as opposed to just purely regional, and it's very, very difficult to crack that nut because that's where the electoral power is, out in the regions. So you need somewhere for an example to be set, and then pressure from the provincial level to reform as well.